Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with an issue that has been bugging me lately that I want to share with you. It concerns the way classical music is packaged and sold and released these days, and it's what I call the clump mentality, clumpitude or clumpitudinosity or clumpatiousness, whatever you want to call it. It's a problem. And the problem is that classical music is being foisted upon us in large, indigestible chunks, even on streaming services where they can break it up into individual songs that consist of individual movements of things. No, there's just all this stuff being shoved out at once. And my point isn't that it's just the record labels that are packaging it that way. It's that the artists are playing it that way. And that's what concerns me. Let me give you an example. Let me tell you what I mean, and it'll become very clear. Here we have George Sells' Beethoven cycle, one of the great Beethoven cycles in the history of the universe. Most people would agree. This was recorded between 1957 and 1965-66. 8 or 9 years. Now that's a rather big difference between what we see now when someone does a Beethoven cycle, like, Yannick Nézet-Séguin or someone like that, or not Maris Jansen's, what's his name? The other one, Andres Nelson's. They shove out all 9 Beethoven symphonies, all in a box, all at once, like they've done them in 15 minutes. Now, I don't want to make too much of that on the artist's side. I mean, well, there is something to be said about it on the artist's side. Yes, they should learn the repertoire. They should contemplate the repertoire. I mean, we know the reason, for example, that Andres Nelson's did the Beethoven cycle in Vienna is because they could play it just as well without him. He didn't even have to be there. I mean, the orchestras are that good. The artists are that good. But, and here's the big but, do we need to hear it all that quickly? Doesn't it create a better impression if things get released gradually so that we can absorb it, number one, and so that the labels and the artists have a chance to make a reputation playing it, number two, and promoting it over time, over a decade, over however long it takes. Look, here's another one. This was Bernstein's Sibelius cycle. This was recorded between 1960 and 1968. 8 years. Now, what about the latest Sibelius cycle by Kendall, Klaus Mekela? I mean, that all showed up in a box all at once, as though they'd spent all of 15 minutes worrying about how they're going to play the Sibelius symphonies, and poof, out they all come, all simultaneously. Doesn't the music deserve better? That's a question. It's a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer it. But I'll give you, on the other side, and there is another side, I'll tell you a little story. This is from Shostakovich's biography. At one point, Stalin wanted a new Russian national anthem, and he thought that the two most famous Soviet composers, who were Shostakovich and he thought Khachaturian, would do better writing one together. Well, they had very different ways of working with each other, and that really wasn't interesting to them. But they got together, and they came up with a national anthem. Well, then they had to play the thing before Stalin. And as Shostakovich relates it in testimony, it's a great story, whether it's true or not. Stalin said, well, we want to change the ending a little bit. We want to do this, and we want to do that. How long is it going to take you to fix it? And so Shostakovich was, didn't want to make it sound like he was being facile about it. He said, I could have done it right then and there. It would have taken all of like 20 seconds. He said, but I thought I should really stretch it out. So he said 15 minutes. Well, Stalin was horrified. He apparently thought, well, it's the national anthem of the great Soviet Union. It requires weeks of contemplation and meditation and inner, soul searching, and it should take weeks or months. He was ready to give them all the time they needed. And he got very offended because he thought that Shostakovich wasn't taking the job seriously at all. But of course, that's the difference between what professional musicians do and their abilities, their capabilities, their understanding about the mechanics of dealing with music, whether it's composition or performance, and the perception of the audience. But here we're dealing with the perception of the audience, of course. The audience buying classical music wants to know that it's getting something important, that it's culturally significant, and it is, and that the artists have spent a lot of time thinking about what they're doing, because you're putting money into the project and your time and your life. And that's the way the industry operated previously. It rewarded people with the knowledge that the product that they were buying was the result of long and lasting contemplation. And we also have the historical facts. I mean, Beethoven wrote his symphonies over his lifetime. Sibelius wrote his symphonies over a period of 20 years or so, a little bit more. I mean, 25 years. Mahler was, the same thing, basically, right? From the 1880s, the late 1880s, to the end of his life in 1911. People produced these things after long and careful labor. Even Mozart with his Haydn quartets, which came out over a period of time, and he said they were a result of a long period of thought and labor, because he wanted them taken seriously. There was a difference between major works and works that were tossed off for, sort of local and part-time events, like the Bach cantatas, of course, which he thought about for all of 25 seconds. He had to write one every week. I mean, he was a genius. I'm just kidding. But you see the point, right? There are some things that need to be given time and should be treated that way. They should be handled that way. I mean, part of the issue also is the sound carrier medium, because LPs could only accommodate so much music. And so that dictated the amount of music that we got, whereas compact discs were designed for classical music, for long works lasting well over an hour. And there are some things that should be exploited that way. I mean, here's one. Vivaldi's L'Estro Armonico with Rachel Podger and the Baroque on 2 CDs on Channel Classics. It's wonderful. You're not going to want to buy 3 albums over a 5-year period to get a complete L'Estro Armonico, all 12 concertos. No, you want them all in a little box. It's convenient. It's nice. It's much better. So, there are arguments on both sides depending on what the repertoire is. But when you see these major symphony cycles coming out, you see these people who just toss them off willy-nilly, without seeming to give them any thought or any effort. We don't know how much thought and effort really goes into the making of a recording of a bunch of symphonies by any one composer, or a bunch of concertos, Beethoven piano concerto cycles, or Mozart thingies, or whatever. We don't know. We don't know. We would like to think that the artists in question are really offering us the result of serious effort, real effort. I mean, thought and effort and insight. And no matter how you slice it, no matter how great a genius somebody is, those things take time. There's no getting around it. They take serious, serious time. And it takes time for us to absorb it all, because we're busy and we have only so much time to listen to music, and we listen, whether you're psychotic like I am and I'm always listening to music, or whether you only have isolated hours in the week or month or whatever for your music listening. You want to spend your time in the most profitable possible way. You want to get the most out of it that you can. And one of the ways that happened was that music was apportioned in digestible quantities. Well, that's not happening anymore. It doesn't happen. It's all getting boxed up. The result of, the Dorati Haydn Symphony box, which I have sitting right here, actually. Let me see if I can do this without causing a disaster if I take this down. Okay. There it is. Dorati Haydn Symphonies. What was this, a decade or two? Remember the original Bach cantata series with Leonhardt and Harnoncourt? What did it take, 20 years? For them to do it, something like that? All kinds of things changed. The sound carrier medium changed. Those big boxes with the scores that came in it. There was a whole new Bach edition that came out in the middle of it, of scores and whatnot. And let me put that back before I have a disaster here. There we go. The point is, we had a huge opportunity to go on a journey of discovery as these artists uncovered new repertoire or revealed familiar repertoire on a case-by-case basis with the love and attention that that repertoire deserved. Well, no more. And that concerns me. It concerns me because, because I think we're getting a very professional product, but are we getting an insightful product? I mean, it depends on the artist, of course. It depends on how, and it depends on who's playing and how smart they are, what geniuses they are. But somehow I think that to have to take an entire huge pile of stuff and just toss it out there all at once is a disservice. It's a disservice to the composer. It's a disservice to the artists. They may be able to do it. They are able to do it. We see them doing it. They just toss it off. They do it. But should they do it? That's the question. So I'd be interested to have your opinion on that, because this clumpishness is really sort of off-putting, I think. It really is. And it's not going to stop. Of course it's not going to stop, because the record labels are recording things in the way the circumstances dictate. The artists are programming things that way so they can make fast and easy recordings, often from live performances, because the orchestras are so good that they don't need to rehearse anything anymore. Are we getting something that is less qualitatively, subjectively, of course, but less powerful, less profound, less impressive than it ought to be? That's my question. I don't really have the answer. You have to sort of evaluate it on a case-by-case basis, don't you? I mean, that's what we do. That's what I do. But the trend is toward, I think, a greater superficiality of results. Part of that is real, maybe, and part of it is purely subjective because this is how it's being presented to us. I don't know, but it's concerning to me. And I'm a little tired of all the clumps. I mean, we're going to be talking about it forever because that's how they're doing it, but I don't think it's healthy. Do you? Keep on listening, friends, whether it's in clumps or not. Thank you for joining me. Take care.